How Arsenal destroyed Real Madrid in the Champions League. Hello, welcome back. I'm Statman Dave. If you are new round here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video. But anyway, let's get this party started. Arsenal destroyed Real Madrid in the Champions League for a number of reasons. Declan Rice's brilliance, their ability to stop the counter and be defensively solid, but also their possession game and Miles Lewis-Skelly were a big part why Arsenal battered the defending European champions. So let's start by looking at the tactics of the game. One of the key things that Arteta has been doing recently is inverting Lewis-Skelly into a Zinchenko role, inverting him from a left-back area into the double pivot, creating a back three in possession with the left-sided centre-back moving out, and of course the right-back sitting a little bit deeper and holding his position. The big thing against Real Madrid is stopping them on the counter-attack, and this has been an idea for Arsenal through this season. When we're looking at the statistics, Arsenal have been one of the best teams in Europe in the Champions League this year. Only Inter Milan have conceded more goals per game, but Arsenal have the best record in terms of expected goals conceded. When facing Real Madrid, you've got to stop one of the most dangerous attacking quartets in the world of Jude Bellingham, Vinicius Jr., Mbappe and Rodrigo. And here's how Arteta did it. So in terms of the setup, what we expect with the front five is the two wingers to play super wide, the number 9 to play a little bit off the line, the 2 8s to move into the inside channels or roam around to get on the ball, the defensive midfielder, of course, to be joined by an inverted left back, and a wide back three. The big thing here, of course, is stopping the break, as we mentioned. It's stopping the likes of Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe getting into the channels, Rodrigo with his direct dribbling, and Jude Bellingham moving into a number 10 area like he does in possession. Arsenal did this by playing a game of chicken with the outside centre-backs. Of course, as Real Madrid drop a little bit deeper, their centre forwards become a little bit lazy. So what you tend to have is 1v1s in these wide areas. So you have to win these duels. This is critical to beating Ancelotti's Real Madrid. But also, the game of chicken can go the other way. And Jurrien Timber once again showed his attacking ability, moving advanced of the players around him and getting good crosses into the box. So let's take a look at the first moment that we're going to analyse, and this comes in the 5th minute. Like I mentioned before, the big thing with Real Madrid is winning the duels in these areas. When you're in your attacking structure, Real Madrid are going to get counterattacks. They just are. They're the best in the world at doing it. But it's limiting the number, which is so important to dealing with Ancelotti's side. So we pick up the play on 5 minutes. Real Madrid have dealt with an attack and they've cleared the ball. The key thing here is Kiwior winning this duel versus Kylian Mbappe. Because if Mbappe wins it, you've got a 2v2 against two of the most dangerous players in the transition on the planet in Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe. But this set up Arsenal's momentum in the game. A big tackle won on the edge of the box, stopping the counter-attack, allowing Arsenal to move the ball through midfield, create a 1v1 for Saka on David Alaba to go on the outside and deliver a really dangerous ball into the box that's well defended from Tony Rudiger. But from a tactical perspective, it's so important in terms of winning those duels, both Jurrien Timber versus Vinicius Jr. and Kiwior versus Kylian Mbappe. The other side of dealing with Real Madrid very much is stopping their wide players in the final third. Arsenal, of course, did this by dropping into a 4-4-2 shape, with both wingers dropping back to protect their fullbacks, Partey and Rice moving into defensive midfield, and the two forward players, Martin Odegaard and Mikel Merino, doing some good defensive work. But the key thing was stopping these guys in the wide area, Vinicius Jr. versus Timber, and Mbappe or Rodrigo versus Lewis-Skelly. But the defensive work of both Martinelli and Saka needs to be studied. These guys are some of the best attackers in the world, but also defensively they're superb. They help their fullbacks out, which again allowed their fullbacks to win their duels. Both Lewis-Skelly and Timber combined won 6 of their 7 tackles in the game. And in terms of the Real Madrid statistics going forward, Rodrigo and Vinicius Jr. failed to complete a dribble and failed to create a chance. But we mentioned that game of chicken before. The outside players in Arsenal's back three had to win their duels, but also they could become jokers in the final third. They could become that extra player as Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappe switched off in a defensive sense. And we see that on the 43rd minute. What I want you to kind of focus on in this is the positioning of Jurrien Timber and Vinicius Jr. just bottom of shot. Of course, Arsenal recycling the ball. Lewis Skelly in acres of space. We'll talk more about him a little bit later on, but that's not what we're focusing on right now. Just look at Rodrigo. He's narrowed up. Right now, he's completely switched off of where Jurrien Timber is. It's kind of his man in a defensive sense. As the ball's worked into the feet of Mikel Merino, the ball's recycled back out. From this position, you've got a massive problem. Vinicius Jr. is nowhere to be seen. Jude Bellingham's been pulled into the midfield battle as Real Madrid midfield narrows to try and stop Arsenal dominating that zone, which opens up huge space for Jurrien Timber to get his head up, spot Declan Rice and deliver a brilliant ball into the box that's well saved by Courtois, with Martinelli's shot also saved by the Belgium international. But that idea of stopping them in the duels in those moments after they'd lost the ball in Arsenal's rest defence shape, so important, but also offensively, they could do some damage. Not only having a good rest defence, but also being really good getting back into shape, allows Arsenal to do one of two things. Rely on an individual moment of brilliance from Martinelli and Bukayo Saka, or work a set piece. And that's exactly how Arsenal took control of this game. We've seen Arsenal do this over and over again under Arteta. A score from a corner, a free kick, or even a throw-in. This time, of course, it was a direct free kick. But again, it was created by this 3-2 structure. The big thing when you're looking at passing options from this outside centre-back position, the progression is really easy for both areas, from Kiwior to Martinelli and from Timber to Saka. Because number one, those 2-8s, if they move a little bit inside, basically narrows up the Real Madrid midfield through Bellingham and Rodrigo narrowing to deal with Ødegaard and Declan Rice. And that is exactly what we saw in, of course, the first goal. So Arsenal building with three players once again. Jurrien Timber, William Saliba and Kiwior. We can clearly see that stagnated double pivot of Thomas Partey and Miles Lewis Skelly. The progression is very simple. Real Madrid's shape is narrowed by Arsenal's players and how they've moved, which creates an easy pass out to, of course, Saka. The movement off the ball from Ødegaard's great. Once again, pulls Jude Bellingham out of a position to stop Saka cutting inside, where you don't really want him to be. As he cuts inside onto his stronger left foot, you've got a real problem for Real Madrid. And David Alaba does make a slight mistake, but you've got to give credit to Saka for not only using his body, waiting for the contact, to win a free kick in a great area to cross the football. Anyway, that's what I thought, and that's what Nicolas Jova thought. But Declan Rice felt something. And he did something that we've not seen in the Champions League for years. And that is score one of 2 direct free kicks. Before this game, Declan Rice had only taken 12 free kicks in his career. And now he scored 2 against Real Madrid in a Champions League quarter-final. The first thing you want to point out here is the wall is too small. It's something that Cesc Fabregas pointed out in his analysis after the game. Usually you want to settle with a 5-man wall. The big thing there, it's to block off that far post. It's to stop you bending the ball around the wall and blocking the goal. You got to think of it as the wall blocks one side of the goal, keeper's dealing with the side that he's dealing with. Of course, Declan Rice deals with both those, but more on that later on. So the big thing here, the ability to whip it outside and strike a ball how Declan Rice does is simply phenomenal. Before coming to Arsenal, Declan Rice was world class in a defensive sense off the ball in terms of tackles, interceptions and pressing. He was world class in ball carrying. He was world class in his passing. The one thing he needed to improve was goals and assists, and that is what he's done in open play and in close play for Arsenal. He's up there with the top assisters from corners in the Premier League, and now he's going to add these types of free kicks to his repertoire. This is ridiculous. A moment of brilliance, but again, created from Arsenal's good shape, Saka being in a 1v1 situation, and Declan Rice doing the rest. So let's move on to the moment of the second free kick as well. What I like about this is we've seen Arsenal in pretty much a settled possession phase. We can clearly see that kind of 3-2-5 structure. This is just after Bukayo Saka has taken a corner. But once again, we can see Arsenal getting into a very similar structure, allowing them to do the right thing. There's some good combination play on the right-hand side through Ødegaard, through Timber and Saka. And as Saka cuts in, you don't really see any problem here. You know, Real Madrid are well set. They are looking to press through Jude Bellingham. Not only does Saka hold off Jude Bellingham, one of the best duellers on the planet, but he completely destroys him with a lovely little croqueta move off one foot to the other, round the challenge to get himself flying forward. But if we just stop it there, we can kind of see the shape. We can see the back three players. We can see the two defensive midfielders. Yes, they've rotated. At the moment, you've got a fullback on one wing. You've got Kiwior on the other wing. You've got Thomas Partey, Declan Rice, and Mikel Merino through the middle. But the structure is still there. And this is after a set piece, so it's slightly disorganised. It's just brilliant. But anyway, let's get back to the dribbling. Bukayo Saka beats one, beats two with Rodrigo, and then Camavinga takes him down in the final third. And for me, this free kick is even better. You know, Nicolas Jova deserves a bit of credit, pulling the three Arsenal players to make a second wall. But for Declan Rice to score on the goalkeeper's side requires pace, technique, curl, everything that he does, and delivers one of the best free kicks I think I've seen potentially ever. Bend it like Declan. You're looking at players that have scored 2 free kicks in a single Champions League game. He joins a list of players such as Rivaldo, Neymar, and Cristiano Ronaldo. But Declan becomes the first Englishman to do it and the first player ever to do it in a Champions League knockout game against the Champions League champions of all time, Real Madrid. Ridiculous technique, ridiculous goal. But if we look at the data, this is quite good for Arsenal. We know it's one of their big strengths, but it's also a big weakness for Real Madrid. They've conceded more goals from set pieces than any other side in the Champions League this season. So not only is the possession shape giving Saka and Martinelli the ability to run at Real Madrid, but if you win free kicks, you might score goals. And that's exactly the game plan that Arteta had. Stop Real Madrid counter-attacking, be defensively solid, get into 2 banks of 4, and score brilliant free kicks. That must have been there right on the flipboard. Whilst Declan Rice's free kicks won the game, Arsenal dominated Real Madrid. When you look at the possession statistics, it's fairly even. Arsenal winning it by a few percent. But if we take a look at field tilt, again, which looks at where the ball is and domination in areas, but also touches in the final third, Arsenal double Real Madrid. They dominated the game. And a big reason why they did that was Miles Lewis-Skelly in midfield. As we mentioned previously, in possession, he was very much inverting from a left-back area into the double pivot. But from that position, he was fantastic. He arguably played more as an 8 than number 6. Partey was kind of holding the position, whilst Lewis-Skelly had the ability in between the lines to be a little bit more attacking, which meant when Arsenal got him the ball, not only did he have the freedom to carry and drive, but he linked really well with Declan Rice. There were some superb passes in between the lines from Lewis-Skelly to Declan Rice after a carry that created good moments, either working the ball wide to Martinelli or Rice directly trying to attack the back 4 on his own. But I think it's a big thing for such a young player to dominate a game like Lewis-Skelly did. If we look at who he was against Luka Modric, the legendary midfielder. Lewis-Skelly completed more passes, had more touches, created more chances, and registered more assists than Luka Modric. What I like about this as well, with Arteta playing Skelly as the 8, you're arguably attacking one of the weak parts of Real Madrid, in a sense of, if Lewis-Skelly was on the other side, he's going to be dealing with a more defensively minded midfielder in Camavinga. But being against a player that arguably is better pressing, in a deeper area, you're basically getting a bit of a strength there, Lewis-Skelly carrying versus Luka Modric. I like that matchup. But also with the shape and why the control was there, was Mikel Merino dropping off the line. Probably one of the best midfield converted into a forward we've seen in recent years in the Premier League. But what Arsenal were doing from a possession perspective, the 2 wingers were pinning the 2 fullbacks, and every single midfielder was getting involved. Arsenal were basically overloading this central area with 5 players. This caused Real Madrid so many issues, and they simply couldn't deal with this problem. And if we take a look at the average positions, we can clearly see this shape and structure. But when you look at the tactics of this and what it causes Real Madrid, it causes them so many problems. For example, let's take a situation of Mikel Merino, dropping off the line, getting involved in the play. You've basically got a situation where, again, the 2 forwards of Real Madrid get taken out super easy by the natural 3v2 at the base. You've now got a problem in midfield, a 3v2 in that area, with Mikel Merino joining that zone. A natural overload, easy to recycle possession and create problems. The other issue is if, for example, let's say Camavinga jumps, got a 1v1 at the base of midfield, simple progression, you're into the final third. But also, if you're looking at players narrowing, the two wide players to kind of join in, as we mentioned previously, you've got issues with, the two central midfielders in Erdegaard and Declan Rice dropping deep into these kind of fullback areas and picking up the ball. But what I also like from Arsenal, another thing that we saw in the game, was in moments when they were kind of building from deep areas. At times, what you'd see is Jurrien Timber playing a little bit higher, them going to more of a traditional two-man build-up structure with a goalkeeper. You saw this especially out the back, the two centre-backs being super wide, but we saw this in possession. The idea of why you're creating a back three, either with the three defenders or with a goalkeeper as well, is to stretch these two Real Madrid centre-forwards, to open up those passes, to break the lines. This is why you do that. I think David Raya is one of the best at faking a pass out wide and then actually firing that pass in between the lines to create that overload in midfield, which again, you've got big problems. One jumps, one might sit, or vice versa. You've got a 3v2 in that zone. You basically, what Arteta has done, he's overloaded their forward line, he's overloaded their midfield line, and then technically, as the players progressed, one of the midfielders will join in and they'll overload the defensive line. It's just perfect tactically from Arsenal. And I tell you what, we've got a great example of this. We have the perfect example. And that, of course, is Mikel Merino's goal against Real Madrid. Let's take a look at that. So again, we mentioned previously, the shapes that Arsenal were using were very fluid and flexible. They weren't fixed at all. A lot of roaming in positions. But generally, is what we're talking tactically happened. But this time, what I want you to focus on is that little idea that we mentioned previously. So going back to the tactics board, it's Declan Rice moving from that kind of advanced area and dropping into a bit of a left-back position, with Arsenal arguably building with kind of a, back four, two defensive midfielders, two attacking midfielders high and two wingers. So as Arsenal pull the ball into midfield, you can clearly see the impact of Miles Lewis-Skelly. He's on the blind side of Kylian Mbappe. He's basically a free man. They narrow quite nicely here, both Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe. They're doing all right from a defensive sense, but Arsenal are just going to keep drawing you in. They're going to open up the pitch by going backwards. Something that people don't like is backward passes, but they're very important. Here's a great example of why they're important. So we get to a position where Saliba actually carries back. We're continuing to draw that Real Madrid pressure high at the pitch. The big thing now is that, as we mentioned previously, David Raya joining the two centre-backs to create a back three. He feints to go on the outside. Again, you can clearly see both Real Madrid players starting to curve their runs outside to pressurise Saliba, which opens up that pass into Thomas Partey's feet. So now we've taken out Real Madrid's two forwards. Now we're going to draw in their midfield. This is now where Valverde's moved into central midfield after some tactical changes. He's going to press the football. Lewis-Skelly's free once again, but also that forward pass to Mikel Merino's free, who's dropped off the line as a false nine. Simple turnout, and now we're in this situation. You've overloaded that central area, and now we're giving the attack a bit of width. Declan Rice has dropped deep to get on the ball. Declan Rice is a world-class carrier of the football. His ability to progress the ball is ridiculous. His progression carry stats are always nuts. They were at West Ham, they are again at Arsenal. And what you mean here is a player that just drives. Continue to drive into the final third, creates a 2v1 on the Real Madrid fullback with Trossard. We've got Lewis-Skelly highlighted because he plays a key role. Because again, he's in the perfect position for this move so far. He's not been used, but in the final third, he's going to be used. The attack's given some more width. The ball's cut back, and look at the space that Lewis-Skelly is. Shout out to Declan Rice for pulling Valverde away from this area. Real Madrid's midfielder on that side, which opens up a really easy pass on his left foot to Mikel Merino, who finishes superbly to score his fourth goal against Real Madrid. That's the most he scored against any team in his club career. Real Madrid got battered at the Emirates. Yes, it was two brilliant free kicks from Declan Rice, but tactically, Arteta got everything right against Don Carlo, who is a multiple Champions League winner. Incredible game. Real Madrid destroyed by Arsenal. Let me know what you think in the comments below, of course. I've been Statman Dave. Subscribe if you're new. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some more content on the Statman Dave YouTube channel.